Now, in the real timeline, episode 8 is heavily focused on Reds versus non-Reds. Due to the events of this timeline, that's not really a thing. So at this point, I'm going to have to deviate from the plot quite strongly. It's basically fan fiction now. However, the one thing that would persist is being the boogeyman. He would tell Pearl and Cleo, but he'd actually try to kill someone, instead of the tactical losing technique he tried in reality. The reason for this is that the original alliances are still very much intact, so he has no qualms about killing anyone outside the Scottish. Before we get to him, I'm still going to say that Ether would have died to a creeper. We can't know for certain, but in the interest of sticking to some semblance of the story, let's say he does. However, Tango has 4 lives, and we definitely donate one of them to Etho as part of the team. So who would Scott go after? Let's think about this the same way we thought about Jimmy. Scott would go for a green, not a yellow. Because if he kills a yellow, then the resulting red would have a vengeance against Scott. The difference between the two people here, between Scott and Jimmy, is that Jimmy was red while Scott's a boogie. If Scott creates a red, that red can't then ally back with him. So Scott would get a green name. The question is, who? Well, remember, at this point, Scott doesn't know that Martin has betrayed Impulse. So Scott would think that Martin is the least offended of any of the Greens. So he would head to the Southlands, where he would find Impulse all on his own. Impulse would explain that Martin left, and then he would actually ask if he could join the Scottish. So Impulse doesn't want to be alone, he needs to be in an alliance for now. And Scott would talk with Cleo and Pearl. They'd both be fine with it, so Impulse became the 4th member of the Scottish, known as Good Guy, to complement, obviously, Gaslight, Gatekeeping Girl Boss. He's called Good Guy because of his kind and peaceful nature most of the time. Of course, remember, no one in this timeline has seen him red yet. So the Scottish people will share the information that Scott was the boogeyman. Of course, he would have told them because he is a nice guy. And Impulse would leap at this opportunity because, of course, he wants revenge. He would ask Scott to kill Martin. And Scott not only would say yes, but actually would invite Impulse to come with. Now at the Shadow Fort, there'd be Martin building his permanent residence, and Liz who's installing some traps. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that she is installing the same one that killed Jimmy. That's the dirt block, triggers the observer, triggers the TNT minecarts. Now when and Bigby aren't there, they're doing something on the server. So Scott and Impulse approach stealthily, and they come up with an evil plan, which goes as follows. Impulse heads to the front gate of the Shadow Fort and asks if he can join the Alliance because he's all alone right now. Regardless of what Liz and Martin say, at some point Impulse tries to enter the base, and Liz warns him about the trap. Impulse asks about it, and Liz explains how it's triggered and what happens. Scott, hiding nearby, hears all this information. He then digs underground, holding a lever to the inner workings of the trap, careful not to set it off. Scott then types a coded message in chat to let Impulse know that he's in position. Impulse then says, "Come on, Martin, come here and look me in the eyes. Think about all the fun times we had. Surely you want me in this alliance too?" Or words to that effect. Martin would come close, Scott would hear, Impulse would yell, "Now!" and Scott would use his lever to activate the trap. Now Scott would have placed blocks in between him and it, but TNT minecarts are very powerful. Scott would die, as would Liz and Martin. Impulse would get to very low health, but he would survive. He would run back into Shadow Fort to loot the place, including getting the beacon that Ren obtained from the weather fight last time. Now when Ren and Bigby returned to the Shadow Fort to see what happened, they, along with Lizzie and Martin, realised the beacon's been stolen. It doesn't take long to figure out where it is, because they can see a bright white colour of light on the horizon, and it's coming from the Scottish Tower. Team Et also noticed the change in beacon location. They start to head over to the Scottish to find out how the beacon moved. They meet the Shadow Alliance on the way, and the Shadow Alliance explain what happened. So all 3 alliances, the Scottish, the Shadows, and Team Et, descend upon the Scottish in what will later be known as the Battle of the Beacon. And remember, for now, Mumbo and Scar aren't present. In their preparations for the battle, Team Et agreed to help the Shadow Alliance get the beacon back. Ether has no intention of following this through. He wants the beacon for himself, but it's useful to have allies, or at least those who believe they're allies. Their plan is as follows. Ren and Tango will scale the Scottish walls or some nearby trees and use their bows to pick off members of the Scottish. Remember, no one's allowed to kill each other. If they happen to get someone down to low health, and that person happens to step in lava, it doesn't technically count. At least that's the excuse. Ether and Digby jump into the fray on the ground, swords flying, trying to combat the Scottish people. Martin sneaks around the back to snatch the beacon, but he plans to get caught. See, the Scottish are going to think they followed the plan, while in fact, even more stealthily, Liz has been digging a tunnel underground to get to the beacon. While the Scottish are busy defending themselves from arrows in the air and axes on the ground, while they're trying to apprehend Martin and defend their base, no one's going to notice Liz creeping in. Of course, Etho has his own agenda here. Watch the beacon, see when Liz is just about to get it, then end the pearl in, grab it, and end the pearl out. Meanwhile, the Scottish have noticed what's happening, and they prepare as follows. Pearl is the only free life, so she defends the beacon. Meanwhile, Scott stays at the top of the tower to keep a lookout for sneak attacks, and to shoot arrows and drop lava down to the ground. Impulse heads out of the base to deal with archers on the other side, before running around to help Cleo as she tackles the foot soldiers inside the cottage. They know they're outnumbered and will probably lose this battle, but they want to take out as many lives as possible along the way. The stage is set, the fight begins, the die is cast. More dramatic analogies. Immediately, Impulse distracts Tango and Ren. He places lava, blocks, TNT, anything he can. They shoot back at him, but those are ranged weapons. They're not great at close combat. So Impulse is able to avoid most of the attacks and getting a lot of hits. Tango runs away, but Ren does try to fight to his credit. Aided by a Scotch bow from above, Impulse is able to force Ren off his tree or wall or wherever he is, and he dies of fall damage. And Tango tries to get a few more shots at Impulse as he runs to Etho to help. Etho, in the meantime, not having received the aid he expected from Ren and Tango, is forced to resort to desperate measures. He breaks the blocks of the Scottish wall, lava pours into the Scottish. Etho was smart enough to stay out of it, but Bigby and Cleo both get caught off guard. They place water where their health takes a hit. Etho then uses potions. He hits Cleo with a splash poison potion and then departs over to her. He uses flint and steel to light the ground beneath her on fire, and she goes up in smoke. At the same time, Tango, still fleeing from Impulse, enters the Scottish, and he gets set on fire by the lava Ether released. Already hurt from Impulse and taking damage quickly in the lava, he too perishes. Meanwhile, Pearl notices Martin, as per the plan, and begins to fight him off, warning him that if he comes any closer she'll have to kill him. Martin still approaches, and Pearl sighs, "I warned you." She presses a hidden button to activate the TNT trap she installed while preparing. A huge explosion tears through the bottom of the Scottish tower. Martin dies instantly, and Pearl gets very low health. She's then finished off by a stray arrow from Etho. Of course, this doesn't count as a player kill, because he wasn't aiming to kill her, just collateral damage from the fight with Cleo. But crucially, this leaves the beacon unguarded with Pearl taken out. Scott realizes this from the top of the tower, and he hurries down, taking some fall damage along the way. Impulse finishes up looting Ren's corpse, and he runs over to help too. If you remember, Etho killed Cleo with the fire and the poison potion, so he and Bigby now have nothing stopping them from reaching the beacon. So Etho splashes himself with a speed potion and runs over, adapting his plan in the heat of battle. Before anything can happen, a gigantic explosion happens right underneath the beacon. Everyone on the battlefield is stunned. No one knows where it came from. To explain it, let's rewind a bit. Mumbo and Scar realise there must be a battle somewhere. They've seen all these death messages in chat, and Mumbo wants to get in on the action. Scar gives him some magic crystals and wishes him luck. Mumbo brings his own egg crystals and heads towards the conflict. When he sees the beacon shining through the Scottish, he guesses that's what the battle's about, so he runs over. He digs a secret tunnel underground, where he runs into Liz doing the same thing on her secret mission. Now, they can't speak for fear of being heard, but they can communicate by placing signs for each other to read. They come up with the idea of Mumbo placing an aim crystal right underneath the beacon, and he blows it up when he can see little name tags nearby. In exchange for Mumbo doing this, he would secure a permanent alliance with the Shadow Fort and Magical Mountain. So Mumbo does this, and when he sees the 4 name tags of Impulse, Scott, Etho, and Bigby all around the beacon, here's the crystal. Now, he and Lizzie are perfectly safe because they're underneath the crystal, underneath the obsidian, but everyone else dies instantly. And for those of you keeping track at home, that's everyone. Everyone on the battlefield has now died, except Liz, who grabs the beacon and runs home to the Shadow Fort. Mumbo himself returns to Magical Mountain with a wonderful new alliance, but the Scottish have lost pretty much everything. You see, after this battle, Impulse, Cleo, and Scott are all now on their way to life. They keep Pearl out of the Scottish, and still angry at the aggressors. She doesn't want to go to the Shadow Alliance or Team X. She heads to Magical Mountain, not knowing they've just become allies with her enemies. So, as the sun sets on the most chaotic episode of Last Life yet, here's how the server looks. Mumbo, Pearl, and Scar rest, weary, atop Magical Mountain, each in possession of a dangerously yellow name, and still in possession of the Enchanter. The wind now whistles through the lonely towers of the Southlands, become a desolate landscape devoid of any life whatsoever. Etho, dejected that he wasn't able to achieve the beacon, returns to his snow castle with his 2 remaining lives, followed by Tango, also with 2. The Shadow Alliance return to their base victorious, each member also holding 2 lives, except for Liz, who has 3, and the beacon. But everyone, no matter the alliance, no matter the colour, stays well clear of the Scottish, for they know it houses a threat most despicable. Gaslight, Gatekeep, and Good Guy, the Red Trio, are hiding and ready to strike. Until episode 9. So in this one, Pearl obviously gets the boogie curse. In addition to her, the 3 Reds give us 4 people who can kill. But who would they want to kill? Well, Impulse is still angry at Martin for abandoning him. Cleo is still angry at Bigby for betraying her right at the start. Pearl is angry at Liz for stealing the beacon, and, more importantly, she is the only light green life remaining, so it's safer for Pearl to kill Liz than it is to kill a yellow and create a red, the same reasoning we used for Scott last time. And of course, Scott himself doesn't have any personal vendettas, but he's happy to go along with any of the other Reds. Now, Pearl has a very trusting nature. Combine this with the fact she wants to stick with her new alliance, and combine that with the fact that the customer of her previous alliance wants to announce if they were the boogeyman. This means that Pearl does reveal to the rest of Magical Mountain that she is the boogeyman, and she tells them she plans to kill Liz, which puts Mumbo in an awkward situation, because obviously he only just struck up an alliance with the Shadow Fort, but he has a fiendishly clever plan. He invites Pearl to use his gas farm to get aim crystals or TNT. Meanwhile, he discusses with Scar, and they both agree it's better to lose one person, Pearl, than to lose an entire alliance with the Shadows. So Mumbo goes over to the Shadow Fort and explains the situation to Liz, and there is where he proposes his master idea. When Pearl returns from the Nether, Mumbo offers her an Ender Porter. Pearl is to throw an Ender Pearl in, and when she needs to escape in a hurry, she types a coded message in chat, and Mumbo, waiting at Magical Mountain, pulls the lever. Pearl agrees, throws her Ender Pearl, and heads to the Shadow Fort. We'll check back in on her soon. Meanwhile, Impulse and Cleo both have their vendettas against members of the Shadow Alliance too. So all 3 Reds decide to use the cast of Cleo's sand, which she made with Bigby at the very start, and after loads of TNT. They decide to bury it under the surface of Shadow Fort, and when everyone's in place, they can detonate it, killing everyone. However, Pearl and the Reds arrive at the Shadow Fort at the same time. There's a feeling of uneasiness between them. After all, they did kick Pearl out of her own base. However, Scott regretted it after all the times they had together, so they form a temporary truce to take out their mutual enemies, the Shadow Alliance. Pearl lends some of the TNT from the gas farm and helps the raids by luring out the shadows from the fort. The guys go in, they place the TNT. When Pearl lures the Shadow Alliance back to their base, she types something in chat to let the Reds know everyone's in place. Now, little did the Reds know, but the coded message she uses to them is the same as the one she agreed with Mumbo. This means that as the Reds pull the lever to blow up the Shadow Fort, Pearl gets teleported away. But you see, this was Mumbo's master plan. When he sees Pearl's message, he places lava in the obsidian box he has created around the Ender Portal. Then he flicks the lever, teleporting Pearl out of the frying pan and into the fire. Pearl burns to death, along with Martin, Lizzie, Ben, and Bigby, who died in the explosion. Martin, Ben, and Bigby, now red, kick Liz out from the Shadow Fort. She's forced to seek help from Team Et, who accept her into Team Let. And Pearl now goes back to join Scott, Impulse, and Cleo in the Scottage. And of course, Pearl now wants revenge on Magical Mountain, while the Shadow Alliance want revenge on the Scottage. The Scottish have already begun to go to Magical Mountain, so while they're gone, the shadows trap their base. Something simple, like lava on top of the water column that goes out the middle of the tower. Then the shadows just lie in wait. Meanwhile, the Scottish have surrounded Magical Mountain. Mumbo and Scar dare them to attack, saying that if they do, Mumbo and Scar are allowed to retaliate, and that would involve end crystals. It's Cleo who takes the first shot, and Mumbo. Mumbo jumps into action with Scar. He gets a few end crystals off as well as a few good crits. Scar moves around the battlefield, placing lava buckets to throw the opponents off guard, and the upshot is Cleo, the most bloodthirsty of the four, is the first to die. She charges straight into battle and gets blown up by an end crystal. Now, Impulse, who is the most timid, gets lava bucketed by Scar, panics, and ends up dying too. However, while Scar is celebrating these kills, Scott creeps up behind him and kills him. Finally, Pearl fires a few more arrows at Mumbo before realizing it's a lost cause. She and Scott both retreat, their numbers now permanently halved. The Scar and Mumbo have a lot to talk about, with Scar being red. What does this mean for the Alliance? Mumbo allows Scar to collect his belongings, and Scar promises to kill Mumbo last due to the time they spend together. Scar leaves and goes instead to the Shadow Alliance, with whom Magical Mountain was recently allied, and who also happen to be the only other Reds who haven't just tried to kill him. And when Scott and Pearl turn to the Scottage, Pearl is ever so slightly in front of Scott because she was the one who chose to run away first. She enters the water column first, and looking down at Scott to talk to him, doesn't notice the lava. When she gets out and starts burning, she yells at Scott that it isn't safe. Scott hurriedly turns around and barely makes it out of the water without drowning. Pearl, on the other hand, isn't so lucky. There was a lot of lava up there, it's just turned to nothing but ash. The shadows emerge around the Scottage, jeering at Scott, who fires his bow at them, but they run away back to their base where they find Scar, who requests an alliance. They accept. Meanwhile, Mumbo, who doesn't want to be on his own, goes to the only other non-Reds, Team Et, although he didn't know they were actually called Team Let. And there he meets Liz, who vouches for him because of their previous alliance. So Etho and Tango let him join, and they become Team Melt. And that's all the vendettas taken care of now, except for Scott. Angry at Cleo's death, he gets all his good gear, all his TNT, everything. He knows that what he's doing is suicide, but if he takes out at least one person, that'll be enough for him. He gets his potions and his gapples and charges at the Shadow Alliance. Caught off guard, they have no time to react before Scott kills Scar. Martin tries to snipe him with a bow from atop the fort walls, and Ren and Bigby attack him with their swords, but boosted by the potions and gapples, Scott's able to survive somewhat as he makes his way up to the tower to get the beacon. However, it takes too long to mine, and his pursuers catch up to him. A dramatic fight ensues atop the Shadow Tower, Scott on one side, Ren and Bigby on the other. Ren perishes, but so, finally, does Scott. This leaves Team Melt, all on air lives, and the Shadow Alliance, now just Bigby and Martin, both on red lives. Everyone else has died, and all the other alliances have crumbled. And that's the end of episode 9. Episode 10, and this is a huge difference, because obviously in the real timeline, there was no episode 10. I was hesitant to make this one. I thought maybe I could just shove it all into episode 9, but I just don't think it's possible. The reason I was hesitant, though, is because who would be the boogeyman in this one? Well, I thought about it, and the only person in Team Melt who has not yet been the boogeyman is Tango. So it's most likely to be him in this episode. So let's say that Tango is the boogeyman. He's not going to attack Ethos due to their long history. He's not going to attack Mumbo because when someone has end crystals, you want them on your own side. So he goes for Liz in the first few minutes of the episode, wanting to get the deed out of the way. Remember, there's a high chance that a lot of Team Melt will die today, so he needs to make sure he gets his kill in while he can before there are no more yellows left. Because obviously if you kill a red, it doesn't cure you. So Liz turns red and defects back to the Shadow Alliance, who want to destroy what is now Team Met. Liz reveals her secret plan of firework rockets and crossbows, and with the game now set to hard difficulty, these do a lot more damage. She and her red friends kill creepers to get the gunpowder they need, while Met spend their time preparing for an attack. They know one is coming. When it does, there's no warning. All three charge over the snow castle walls, fireworks blazing. Mumbo had strategically placed end crystals all around the castle, so when they let off the fireworks, it backfires almost immediately. The first to shoot will be Liz, still angry at her recent betrayal. She gets wiped out, and Digby and Martin take damage, so that when Etho uses his potions, both on himself and on them, depending on what the potion does, they stand no chance. However, while Etho is busy taking care of Martin, Digby is able to attack Mumbo, who was also wounded from being near the end crystal explosion. So after this short skirmish, we're left with Etho and Tango on yellow, and Mumbo on red. Now we've already seen what happens when Mumbo turns red. He becomes an animal. Immediately he turns on Etho and Tango, but not being the best at PvP or having any good weapons to his name, especially against an opponent like Etho, is quickly vanquished. And then there were two. Etho and Tango turn to face each other. They understand what has to happen. They must die. Even if they don't, even if they survive together, next episode, one of them will be the boogeyman, and the alliance will tear apart. There's only so much they can do to prevent it. Etho and Tango created a ceremonial redstone killing machine to kill them both at the same time. They set their spawns in separate locations and put all their good stuff in chests near their bed. Etho and Tango are both allowed to check each other's redstone before using the machine. Suddenly, treachery! Just as they're about to step inside, Etho reveals he kept his sword and armor. Tango, having been honest and holding nothing, gets killed easily and respawns livid. Deep down, Etho knows that what he did was wrong. Even beyond that, at the end of the day, he's a content creator. He knows more people will watch if it's an even final fight. So when Tango comes for revenge, he doesn't try too hard. He lets Tango kill him, and now they're both on red. The final two players. 10 sessions, over 2 months, 60 deaths, 15 eliminations, and one final battle. Two spread out to the far corners of the map. Each has all their finest gear with them. The ghosts in chat count down. 3, 2, 1. Fight. And that's how the story ends, I'm afraid. There are far too many variables to know who wins this fight for certain. So, I'm leaving it up to you. Who do you think would win Last Life? Tango or Etho? I'd love to hear what you think, and of course I do have my own opinion, so I'd love to discuss it with you. Please let me know down below. And with that said, folks, this has been quite the roller coaster. Those 5 fish snowballed across 10 sessions and 17 players into this completely different storyline. If you disagree or you think I've missed anything, please let me know. I'd love to hear how you think it would have gone if Mumbo had not taken the 5 fish. But with that said, this has been Dobby, and thanks for watching a Last Life video. And by the way, the footage you're watching right now is from the Phoenix Craft video after next. The next one has literally been sitting on my computer, fully edited and everything, for about a month. But hopefully that will change soon. I'm very lazy. You know that bit that I do where I say, oh, I'm going to do this thing. Or maybe not, depending on how lazy I am. That's not a joke, I am really lazy. Anyway, stay tuned. If you enjoyed, then leave a like on this video or a nice comment. It does mean a lot to us. And subscribe so you don't miss more content like this one. See ya!